Hello, this is Patrick with New Jersey's Outdoor Adventures YouTube channel, and welcome back to the 1961 AIRSTREAM BAMBI project. Last time we left off, I had the interior of the shell media blasted to get rid of all the layers of paint that the previous owners had put on this trailer. The next step was to hand sand the whole inside. It's extremely labor intensive. Once you do a media blasting, the interior had like a gritty like feeling, and it was not a good surface for the finished paint. Then once I was done with that, I had to wait for the weather to get to a certain temperature day and night in order to do the automotive interior painting job. So I had one of my buddies come over and help me out. He used to paint cars, so he had a lot of the equipment and materials needed to paint the interior skin. And I went with an off-white. It's more of like a light tan interior that matched the original finish, but what I did was I went with a single stage paint. So it has 2 coats of primer and then has 2 coats of automotive paint. And it looks really nice. There's a lot of imperfections in the interior skin of an AIRSTREAM travel trailer. They had a really thick, gritty type finish when they painted them when they were new. But a lot of times over the years, people didn't like the way that it looked because of discolor, and they would paint it with regular house paint. And the problem was all that paint was peeling, and people would just paint on top of that. It was never a good way to correct the problem that the paint will still peel. So stripping it and coating with automotive paint after I did extensive hours of labor of prep on the skin really came out with a beautiful finish. So I could see some ripples in it because that's just how the AIRSTREAM looked back then. And I didn't go with high gloss and I didn't go with clear coat because I didn't want to show them anymore. So I wanted them to hide a little bit. So after that was done, I put the interior ocean air roller shades in. So there's roller shades throughout the whole trailer. There's 2 on this side, there's 1 on the front window, and there's 1 on the back window. They come in all different sizes. So I was able to find exact one that fit on the front window and the side windows, but the back, because the bathroom window is blocked by that partition, I had to cut the shade smaller, and that required a little bit of dissection. So what I was able to do was garbage pick a shade that was damaged and take it all apart to do my discovery to figure out how it was built and how I could modify it. Once I did that, I was able to cut the shade, the wand, the material shorter, and then reassemble it, reclock it, and then install it in the back. After the shades were put in, I put the vinyl flooring throughout. So in order to do that, I had to sand the plywood floor completely smooth. And by the way, this is the original plywood that AIRSTREAM put in the trailer in 1961. This trailer is 60 years old. It could have had and should have had and probably had some water leaks over the time, but asbestos tiles, those 8x8 tiles that I pulled out of here, the original tiles, somehow protected that floor. So I lucked out. There was no soft spots, there was no rot. But I did have to sand it all smooth. There was a lot of holes I had to fill, and I filled them with wood putty. And then there was a lot of holes in the floor because originally over here there would have been the original gas furnace on board, and there was original water tank up front. And by me relocating some items, I was left with a hole in the floor. So what I did was I made plugs. I routed out a perfect hole, made a plug that filled in the hole, and had a top layer that was smooth with the plywood floor. And then once I was all done, I puttied that. Then I could lay down the 1 sheet of vinyl floor. And I believe this is a Wilson Art sheet floor. And I laid it out on the driveway, cut it pretty close. I got it as close as I possibly could to dimensions, and then brought it in here, and I let it sit for about 2 days. And I let it go hot, cold overnight, and hot again, and expand and contract to where it needed to be before I cut it perfectly around the edges. It was very important that I did that step, because if it was wrinkled and I cut it, or if it was shrunken and I cut it, I could fall short in some areas. After that was done, I put the threshold in at the entry door, and then I had to reassemble the interior of the AIRSTREAM trailer. And what happens to be the kingpin, the first item that goes in, the little miniature 8-gallon black waste tank. And I got that in place, loose, and then I put the box over the toilet, and then I had my friend bend aluminum over that box that meets exactly up with the shower pan, and that prevents that wet bath, the toilet area, from saturating and leaking underneath onto the plywood floor. Originally, it was just a plywood box with asbestos tiles on it with trim around the edges. I have no idea how that didn't leak or didn't rot the floor, but it had huge gaps in it, so maybe they never used the shower before. But now that I have that weather tight there, I was able to install the toilet and the partition wall. The partition wall is what separates the bathroom from the kitchen area. And in between those two pieces of wall, there's an inside layer and an outside layer, is a vent stack for that black tank. And that's where the chute runs all the way up through to the ceiling. In that same area, I added a prep for air conditioning, because when I had the whole interior taken apart, I added a junction box up by the 14 by 14 vent, and I prepped it for air conditioning. I fished down the wire, it's a metal wrapped wire, into a junction box that's next to the refrigerator, and then that is then wired up to the front here for where the converter charger and battery charger will be. Then I put in this big pantry cabinet. The big pantry cabinet used to house a furnace, so it only had 2 doors. I added an extra door on the bottom. That is the original cabinet, but it's refaced. I put new veneer. I put new oak veneer, and I stained it. And then on the side, that's the part of the wet bathroom, I put laminate there because that area could get wet. So it's regular kitchen countertop laminate. I routed it out. And if you watched that video, you saw I made a little mistake, but we worked through it. And then I was able to build the wardrobe off of it. I already had all these pieces rebuilt, but I put this face frame on and attached it and pocket hole screwed it in place. Then I was able to slide this partition wall in, and that's the Luan board. That's about 1/8 inch. And recently I just hung the mirror. That's the original mirror, but instead of little plastic brackets, I built brackets out of walnut, and I routed the back with a groove in it that the mirror sits in, and that is screwed in from the back and clamped in place, and that prevents the mirror from sliding side to side and bowing out. Once I got that all in place, I built the curbing now for the shower. I had to recreate what AIRSTREAM had back in 1961. They had aluminum and nails, and I just simplified it. I used nice, clean, smooth aluminum, some angle bracket aluminum, and I polished it up really nice. And I used some cabinet trim aluminum at the bottom, all riveted in place. And that curbing helps keep that shower pan from warping, and it allows you to slightly step on it if you need to step into the shower. And also aesthetically is pleasing when you walk down the hallway to see that bright aluminum. I'm still in process working on the upper curbing, which will be similar to that, but that has a shower curtain rail in it. I'm just not sure what type of curtain I'm going to be using at this time, so I have to decide on that before I pick the rail that it's going to use. Then in that process, I was able to hang up the lights on the inside, so I was able to install the light system. These lights, I restored the original lights. The back two would have looked like the front two, but I used a different style of vintage light. But these lights are AC and DC, so they run off electric. There's an electric bulb and an electric switch when you're plugged into electricity. And there's a 12-volt switch, a DC light bulb inside when you're running on battery, which I am right now. So I got those installed and in place. And then I was able to install the rest of the kitchen cabinets. now start the rough-in for the electrical and the plumbing. Electrical, I mean AC and DC. So I had to run marine 12-volt wiring. So it comes in a big roll, and it looks like Romex, like you use a house, but it's got a red wire and a black wire, and they're stranded, and each wire runs a different circuit. So I have one circuit that powers the DC side of the refrigerator. I have one that goes to the Truma heater, so that heater runs on AC and DC. I got one for USB charge ports in the back, one for the lighting on board. I have one for a propane leak detector, and then I have another one here for the water pump, and there is some more. Then I put it in a heavy sleeve, and those wires all run together on a wiring harness, just like you'd have in a car, and they split out where it needs to split. And instead of using electrical tape, which melts and gets glue everywhere, I use a cloth tape, which they use in the automotive industry, that could take the higher heat of being inside of a room that is not conditioned like your house. So I got that all in place, and then I ran the AC line, which has regular Romex like you would have in a house, with 20 amp, and it's a 12-2 wire. It's the yellow wire. And I ran that wiring harness, and that powers the rear electrical outlets, the electrical side of the refrigerator, electrical side of the water heater. I also have one for the air conditioning prep, and then I'll have others up here for additional items. Got that wiring harness in, and then I was able to put in the fresh water tank, and I was able to hook up to the existing that I put in the previous video, the fresh water fill, the potable water fill spout, the vent, and then I hooked up to the city water connection. And then throughout the trailer, there's different low point drains, and low point drains allow you to drain down the water system when you're not using the trailer, so you get rid of the water so it doesn't get stale, or for winterization, evacuate all the water out of the plumbing system so it doesn't freeze when you're not using it and not heating the trailer. All the plumbing in this trailer is completely inside the body, which is great. Only thing that pops out through is the low point drains. So there's 90-degree valves for the drains. There's a drain for the fresh water tank. There's a drain for the cold water line that goes from the water pump to the back. And then there is a low point drain in the back trunk area for the hot water side of the water. And then the water heater itself has a pressure relief valve, another low point drain, and another valve that allows it to relieve if there's too much pressure in the water heater. So those are all plumbed and go through the bottom of the trailer. It's all PEX tubing with brass fittings. Some areas I had to use the plastic style fittings, and I used a crimp connection for all those fittings. And then once I got that all set, I was able to permanently install the Truma heater, and I installed that on wood blocks so it sits a little bit higher off the floor. And I got that set, and I got the control built into the cabinet. I got the sensor built in there. And then I was able to run the propane line to it. Originally it was a propane line for the furnace that would have been here. There was one for the refrigerator. The refrigerator now is just AC/DC. There was one for the cooktop and one for the original water heater. So I had 4 lines coming up a main trunk down the middle of the trailer. So I was able to cap 2 of the lines and then make and bend and double flare a new line that goes directly to the Truma. In each one of those propane lines, I put a gas shutoff valve. I know the RV industry doesn't do it, they're not required to, but I figured for my build, while I was doing it, I would add a shutoff valve. So if I needed to isolate and shut off just the water heater, I needed to isolate or shut off just the cooktop, I could do so by shutting off one valve instead of shutting the propane tanks off themselves. And then I have those capped off lines. If I ever wanted to add an outside grill connection, I could easily add that later if I decided to. Install the shelf underneath the kitchen sink and get the drain lines hooked in. So now I have water coming in, I gotta get the water out. So I was able to tie into the black tank, and I used something we call a cheater valve to allow air behind the water so it flows properly when you drain the kitchen sink. But then that drains down into the stack for the black tank, and it's completely vented outside. And then in that black tank, there's also another valve that if I ever wanted to add a tank monitoring system, or if I ever wanted to add a black tank flush, I do have another plug that I spin welded into that tank. That was another video as part of this series. I showed you how to spin weld fittings into the tank, and that was a learning lesson for me, and something that it takes a little bit of learning curve. So when you buy a very expensive brand new tank, you try not to learn on it, but I had no other choice to do so. So once I got that all set and the drains were all hooked up, then I was able to work on underneath the trailer, and I had to get the black tank, which is the toilet tank, and the gray tank, waste tank, which is the shower waste, to wire together into one standard Valterra sewer connection. And what I decided to do, the original design was the gray tank emptied above the wastegate for the black tank. So if you wanted to take a long shower, there was no gray tank back then. If you wanted to take a long shower, you had to actually open the black tank. So there's no way to separate the two. So the valve I used allows you to open up the gray waste valve by keeping black waste in the tank, and allows you to hook up a waste hose directly to the campground and continuously run the gray water out directly into the campground's waste system, with leaving the black tank being able to stay closed if you wanted to. That's really good if you're boondocking and you wanted to empty the gray waste into a portable container and then empty it in appropriate. You're not forcing to have a combination where the gray and black mix together. I'm very happy with the faucet that I picked. It's very vintage looking, and it's very high quality product. I boxed out the rest of underneath the kitchen sink area where there's a shelf with some of the original aluminum flashing that they had. And that prevents things from jostling around and falling behind the cabinet where this drawer bank is. And I rebuilt that whole entire cabinet. It's all original, just re-veneered. But I handmade each one of the drawers. And all the drawers in this trailer I remade using thicker materials. So that was, each drawer takes several hours to make. And I had 4 there and 4 in the front. So that's a lot of time just invested in making drawers. But that was a project that I learned a lot from. Had to buy a couple new tools to do, but now I have high quality drawers inside my AIRSTREAM. And then putting the Truma in, I had to run heat duct work throughout. So it's another thing, it just doesn't dump air straight into the cavity. There's a heat duct that runs behind me that's going to run up to the front sofa lounge area. There's a heat duct that runs underneath and out the kitchen cabinet, and then I ran one all the way around that goes into the wet bath, and it has a special register on it that will not let water come in. So I can't shower and accidentally get water in the heat duct vent, because that's going to go right down in the furnace and damage it. That furnace is ducted outside. That's a Truma Eco Plus, the combi unit that runs on gas and electricity. So it's dual source. 12 volt is its power to operate the system. But that's vented outside with a dual lined intake and exhaust vent, and I utilized the original water heater compartment. So that original water heater shroud, I was able to rebuild and seal off completely from the weather, and just drill a hole in it in disguise that allows the intake and exhaust to come through one common area. So when you look at the outside of the trailer, it looks pretty period correct. I was very mindful when I was doing stuff in the exterior to try to make it look as original as possible. One of the things that I did to help with that is I wanted an outside shower. And by putting an outside shower, and it's a big box, and I wanted it to hide it, but there was really nowhere left. Well, there's a side compartment on this trailer that was large enough to house the outside shower, and the compartment was pretty drafty. So I was always thinking about sealing it off completely. I was able to seal it off, but leave a gap between the outside door and the inside ceiling, which gave me enough room to cut in an outside shower. I got a beautiful stainless steel shower case that's lockable with a really high-end hot and cold water wand with a sprayer. And that, when you open the outside compartment, that unlocks, and then you can hang the wand up and then utilize it outside. And then when you close it and close the door, it's weather tight, it's insulated because it's in the body now, and it's discreet. Someone's not going to know that that doesn't match the period of the trailer. What I also did was where the exterior 30 amp electrical cord comes in, I hid that underneath the original battery box that's outside. That's no longer going to be utilized. The battery box is now storage. And then where the original city water fill is, I replaced that with a city water fill that has a water pressure regulator built into it. And then where the freshwater tank fill was, I replaced that with a stainless steel door that opens up and it has the potable water cap built into it. And then I replaced all the electrical outlets in here, and I went with like just an old school style outlet, but with a chrome faceplate. And then I added and replaced a residential looking switch that operated the water pump with an RV type switch. And then I replaced all the door gaskets all the way around. And now what's next is I have to do the final assembly. So everything that's in here is in place, but I have to figure out what I'm going to do for curtain and privacy for the wardrobe area. It's a pretty large wardrobe. It's going to have an aluminum shelf up top. It has a wardrobe rod, nice chrome one that's in there. But I don't know if I want to see inside the wardrobe all the time. But I'm trying not to make it so it looks small when all this furniture's in here with a big door. So got to think that one through. I have shower curtain material. One curtain is going to protect the door opening and where the toilet paper holder is and the wall there. And then there's another one that's going to slide across that's going to cover the toilet area, and that will prevent the toilet from getting soaking wet. Even though that area is weather tight right now, I'm just trying to make it easier. If someone takes a shower, there's not a whole lot of drying off to do. So it's going to just be contained to that shower pan area. And originally, the light that was in over the cooktop, it had a metal hole with a metal box behind it. And what they would do is they put frosted plexiglass over that. And on the inside wall of the shower, there was another piece of plexiglass that was frosted. And the way you would get a light in the bathroom, because it was a wet area, they didn't want an actual light fixture in there, you turn on the light over the cooktop, and that would shine light through the wall and reflect off the transparent and the nice shiny aluminum inside the wall and illuminate and shine up that bathroom. I thought that was pretty cool, but I figured a waterproof LED light would be more practical. I'm not a huge fan of LED lights. I like the natural light of an incandescent bulb, but I figured in the bathroom, since it's something that you're only turning on while you're using the bathroom and shutting off, it was fine. The rest of the bulbs in the trailer are all incandescent. They're going to stay incandescent. Another big project was resealing the windows. So all the windows where the glass meets the frame, that all had to be resealed. And then where the actual window frame meets the inside window frame, I had to put all new gaskets there as well. And then I had to put the little felting around all the window hardware, because when you open and close these windows, there's a gap there so bugs can get in. And then I had all the screens rescreened, and I was missing one. And the screens on here are nice, shiny, polished aluminum frames, so it looks kind of neat. You can't get that anymore. All they have is powder-coated white. So I went to the screen repair shop, and I said, hey, do you have any old bent or ruined screens that have the bare aluminum? Can you kind of match this up for me? And he searched around the shop. He actually found some, so he rebuilt the missing screen using similar period correct material so it matches, which I'm extremely happy with that outcome. So I'm putting in the sofa box soon. That's going to have the Lagoon table built into it, the beautiful walnut top. And then I'm going to put the sofa face frame and the sofa board up front. Before I do that, I have to get the battery system dialed in. And originally, when I was buying stuff for this trailer, when it all started 2 years ago when I bought this, I bought 2 AGM batteries. That was the thing people were doing. Now the lithium iron phosphate are more popular, more reasonable in price. So I gave those 2 AGM batteries away to a friend, and I bought a new Battleborn 100 amp hour 12 volt battery. So I'm reducing the weight quite a bit because I'm getting rid of 2 heavy batteries, which are probably about 130 pounds total, and replacing it with a battery that's about 42 pounds. The nice thing about this is I don't have to vent it outside. I was going to originally vent that battery box outside and have it completely sealed. Now I can leave the battery inside the body, not vented, and not have to use a battery box, which really frees up some space, because it's going to have the fuse box and the breakers up front here, and then it's going to have the separate battery charger off to the side, which leaves me a little bit of room left for some bulk items. So I'm going to have a drawer, this bulk area, 3 drawers across here, so every inch of this trailer, every inch, there's not one wasted space, is utilized for storage. And that back trunk used to be storage for like the power cord. I can still put stuff in there, but there's a lot going on back there. There's some wiring, there's 12 volt and AC, DC. You have the propane lines coming in, you have the refrigerator fans. So I'm not sure if I'm going to utilize that for that type of storage. So stay tuned. This is just an update video to get all the people that were following that whole series last year during the COVID lockdown. I probably got 5 years worth of work done on this trailer in 2 months because I had a lot of extra time during that time frame. And the rest, since then, the progress has been slow but fun. This was a project I bought this trailer to spend 5 years doing it. And here it is 2 years later since I bought it, and it's almost done. It will never be done. There's always going to be little tweaks here and there that I'm going to do, but it's close to done. And I don't want to rush through it because this is something I enjoy and I'm learning, so I'm taking it easy. Just this mirror, making those walnut brackets on the bottom and putting the walnut oil on them and getting it set, that one little project, those 2 brackets, took me about 3 hours. Polishing all the aluminum, the side splash for the cooktop, and the little trim that goes between the countertop and the wall, just polishing those items took me about 3 hours. So the human hours that's in this trailer is tremendous, and it's 90% me. I had one of my coworkers install the axle for me, so that saved some time. I had one of my coworkers paint this at my house here, so that took off some time. I hired in a sandblaster to come here and sandblast, immediate blast the trailer. So there were some things I had to sublet out, but most of it I've done myself and had the research online myself and use my 19 years selling Airstream knowledge to try to figure out. But there's still stuff I did learn, and I suggest if you're looking to buy a whole bunch of new tools and learn a lot of new lessons, go out and buy an old Airstream and start getting into it. What I do recommend is the first thing everybody does is gut everything and break pieces, save everything, take everything out as if you're going to use it over, because you could template a lot of that stuff or you could re-veneer it and use it over. And that's exactly what I did. I wanted to try to use as much of the original items as I could. I could have easily thrown everything away and bought new pieces, but I wanted to keep to the character of 1961 when Airstream and its founder originally designed and built these trailers for what they were. It was supposed to be a lightweight trailer, go anywhere, and it was one of the first self-contained Airstreams that had refrigeration, heat, and ventilation, as well as a black tank and plumbing. So there was other trailers that were before that had a lot of those items, but not all of them, and this is one of the first self-contained, and it could be towed by a car. So I enjoyed the project. I hope you enjoyed following along. Sorry there hasn't been a tremendous amount of update videos done between last year and now. But this is Patrick with New Jersey's Outdoor Adventures YouTube channel. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like this video, comment, share, and subscribe. I love it. And we'll see you soon.